Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today let's discuss the top 100 Playwright SDET or QA automation testing frequently asked interview questions. Okay, so let's get started. These are Playwright basic questions that you should be aware of. Like some of the question goes like, what is Playwright? Why the Playwright is faster than Selenium? What's the difference between Playwright and Cypress? Which browsers are supported by Playwright? What is browser context? And difference between browser and browser context? What are Playwright fixtures? Auto waiting in Playwright? Locator strategies in Playwright and the differences. Okay. So, and then the next question are based on the set of Playwright advanced concepts, like how do you handle the multiple tabs or windows, how do you upload the files, download the files, handle frames or high frames, how do you capture screenshots, how do you run tests in parallel, and how do you handle synchronization issues, what's tracing in Playwright, how do you debug the failed test cases, what is headless execution, and how to perform headless execution. Okay, so the next set of questions are based on framework level interview questions, where you need to explain the architecture of Playwright framework you are using in your project, and what type of design pattern you worked with, and why did you choose POM design pattern if so, and how do you maintain the reusable components, how do you manage the test data, how do you handle the environmental configurations, how do you implement the logging process. Okay, and then how do you generate the test reports, how do you rerun the test cases, and how do you retry failed tests, and how do you run smoke or regression suits, how do you tag the test cases. Okay, so the next set of interview questions are based on API automation, where you might need to ask they might ask you to explain on how do you perform API testing, and the differences between the respective HTTP methods like put and patch, and how do you validate the API response schema, how do you handle the authentication tokens, how do you chain APIs, how do you mock APIs in Playwright, what is contract testing, how do you validate response time, what are some of common HTTP status codes, and how do you test negative API scenarios. Okay, the next set of interview questions are based on JavaScript or TypeScript, which are common questions, the differences between var, let, and const, the promises in JavaScript, difference between async and await, and the differences between the operators, and some of the uh, definitions like closures, callback hell, arrow functions, and explain map filter and reduce, differences between interface and type in TypeScript, why TypeScript is preferred in Playwright mostly. Okay, so these are some of the JavaScript or TypeScript basic common questions asked in interview. The next set of interview questions are common coding questions, which are must for a state, like reverse the string, find the duplicate characters, check if the string is a palindrome, or check if the number is a palindrome, and find largest number in the given array, Fibonacci series, and remove duplicates from the given array, count the word occurrences, sort array without built-in methods, find the missing number in the array, anagram validations. Okay, so the next set of interview questions are based on CI/CD and DevOps questions. Here questions comes like, what is CI/CD, how do you integrate Playwright with Jenkins, how do you trigger automation in pipeline, how do you run run Playwright in Docker, and then what is GitHub Actions, how do you schedule nightly job executions, how do you publish the reports in CI, how do you execute tests in Kubernetes, what are environmental variables, explain the branching strategy in Git. Okay, and then the next set of interview questions are based on database testing. So here they might ask you the questions like, how do you connect DB in automation, what's the difference between delete and truncate, what are joins in SQL, how do you validate the backend data, can you write a SQL query to find the duplicate records, what are the differences between where clause and having clause, and what is normalization. Okay, and then what is primary key and what is foreign key, how do you validate the DB after UI operation. Okay, so these are some of database testing interview questions. The next set of interview questions are based on real-time scenario. For example, excuse me, yeah, for example, your locator changes frequently, how do you handle it? Tests are flaky in CI but pass locally. Why? Login works manually but fails in automation. Application has captcha, what will you do in that situation? How do you handle OTP authentication? How do you automate microservices applications? What if API response changes unexpectedly? How do you reduce automation execution time? How do you handle dynamic tables? What will you automate first in the new project? Okay. The next set of interview questions are based on advanced SDET or full stack questions. Okay, for example, what is the difference between functional and non-functional testing? What's shift left testing? What's contract testing? What is TDD versus BDD? What is Docker and why it is used in automation? What is Kubernetes? Can you explain the architecture of microservices if you are aware of? How do you how do you test event driven system? And what is observability or log monitoring? Why do you want to become an SDET? Okay, so these are some of the advanced level SDET interview and answers, sorry, questions. And the next set of topics that we need to be prepared are on the framework level components. This is a must interview question in all the interviews. Some of the components that you should be aware of or to explain in the interview, like page object model, fixtures, hooks, utility classes, config management, retry mechanism, reporting, logging, coding or debugging skills, parallel execution, CI/CD integrations. Okay, so these are some of the framework components that you should be familiar with. Okay, guys, answers for all these interview questions along with detailed answers. And if you are looking for ultimate full stack automation QA interview mastery kit with 200% job focused preparation and which contains 10,000 plus real time interview questions and answer, and it contains A to Z everything, study materials, notes, PDFs and everything, along with company wise interview questions asked in product based company, questions asked from product based company, multinational company, and startups and mid-sized companies. Okay, we try to cover everything. Please do check it out. The given link is in description and comment box. Please do check out and let me know if you have any queries or questions in the comment box or in the Gmail. Thank you so much for watching my video. All the best for your next interview.